Quiet in your beds, Admiral Fisher had said. We will be incomparably superior to the entire German fleet. Yet there were those who were uneasily conscious of new factors. A naval revolution had been silently in progress. Underwater. The mine and the submarine created dangers to which the largest dreadnoughts were vulnerable. No one knew how these underwater weapons would affect the great fleets. An American admiral had once said, "Damn the torpedoes, full speed ahead." And close observers knew that Britain had lagged behind in developing the underwater armaments.
We had no efficient mine, no properly fitted minesweepers, no arrangements for guarding our ships against mines, no anti-submarine precautions, no safe harbor for our fleet.
The lack of submarine defenses for the British fleet, even in its home base, haunted the Commander-in-Chief, Admiral Jellicoe.
I was always far more concerned for the safety of the fleet when it was at anchor in Scapa Flow in the early days of the war than I was when the fleet was at sea.
Unsuspected uncertainties hovered around the Royal Navy as it went to war. Germany had acquired a colonial empire in Africa and the Pacific, more than 4 times the area of her homeland, and she had developed a huge export trade. In the Far East was the only naval force outside the North Sea that carried the flag of Imperial Germany, the German Asiatic Squadron under Admiral Graf von Spee. This alone defended Germany's Pacific colonies. The Allies planned von Spee's immediate destruction. Take away his bases, his radio and coaling stations, and his squadron would be helpless. The first to be seized was Samoa. Palms and sands and lazy islanders ringed by the glamorous South Seas. This was where Robert Louis Stevenson of Treasure Island had died and been buried. That ridiculous island, the Kaiser called it. There was no fighting in Samoa. A party of New Zealanders came ashore to accept the German surrender with due ceremony. The black, red, and white flag of Germany came slowly down the mast, and the Union flag flew in its place. On the same day, the BEF was marching back from Mons and Le Cateau in dour exhaustion. On September the 10th, the remote tropical war moved to another German island, New Pomerania, off the coast of New Guinea. There was a brisk action, ending in an Australian victory. On September the 15th, the whole of German New Guinea surrendered. Australia, in her first campaign of conquest, had added 90,000 square miles to the British Empire at a cost of 6 dead and 4 wounded. But Germany's strongest Pacific colony and von Spee's main base was Tsingtao on the Kiao Chau Peninsula of China. Its governor telegraphed to Berlin,
"Tsingtao is impregnable. It cannot be taken from the sea, and no one would try from the land."
But it could be besieged. Japanese, British, and Indian troops landed on September the 2nd. The Japanese had a problem. They couldn't tell a German European from an English one.
We sent out a mixed patrol, ourselves and the Japanese, and they shot one of our men. They'd never really forgiven for that. Asked why they did it, they said, "Oh, we look the same as the Germans." So they gave us Japanese kimonos coming down to our thighs, which had capes. And then when we all wore kimonos, we were all sort of chaps together. There were no more accidents.
The siege of Tsingtao went on for 9 weeks. The Japanese brought up heavy howitzers to smash the forts, as the Germans had smashed Liège and Namur.
We were out resting now on the 6th and 7th, and we were behind a ridge, nice cover, and all of a sudden the Japanese officer coming on horseback, full gallop. He says, Germans finish, Germans finish, white flag is up. And they surrendered on the 7th, on a Sunday morning, the 7th of November.
Now the last islands to fly the German flag in the Pacific fell one by one. The Marianas and the Carolines, the Marshalls and Bougainville. And one by one, Admiral von Spee lost his hopes of coal and succor. His sleek ships steamed on in isolation. Winston Churchill described his dilemma.
With the blockade of Tsingtao, he was cut off from his only base on that side of the world. To steam at full speed or at high speed for any length of time on any quest was to use up his life rapidly. He was a cut flower in a vase, fair to see, yet bound to die.
Germany's African empire was crumbling too. In August, Togoland fell. In September, the Cameroons. Southwest Africa was attacked. The operation was delayed by a rebellion of Afrikaners who wanted to reverse the result of the Boer War. Rebels were killed, dispersed, or captured, but the Germans had been granted a respite. But by the summer of 1915, the Union flag flew over the whole of this vast territory. The first invasion of German East Africa ended in rout. A British and Indian force, poorly commanded and poorly trained, landed on the swampy coast. Amid muddles and misunderstandings, they were attacked by well-trained African askaris under a great German commander, Colonel von Lettow-Vorbeck. The British, their invasion hopes shattered by dysentery and gunfire, withdrew after 4 days, leaving behind 800 dead and many prisoners, as well as enough guns and ammunition, coats and blankets to supply the German garrison for years. Von Lettow-Vorbeck and his mobile force of never more than 15,000 harassed up to 130,000 Allied troops till the very end of the war. East Africa held out, but the German Empire had disappeared from the map. Her merchant fleet had also disappeared. The blockade mounted by the British Navy on the first day of war was doing its work. German merchant ships were penned up in neutral ports all round the world. Ships of neutral nations were prevented from bringing her any materials of war. This created an instant source of friction between Britain and America. Lloyd George wrote,
Germany's chief power was on land, Britain's on the sea. Germany's invasion of Belgium, her devastation of France, might arouse disinterested wrath in America, but it did not touch American pockets. On the other hand, Britain's firm measures to prevent contraband of war from reaching Germany, and her wide and constantly widening interpretation of contraband, caused serious inconvenience to American shipping and direct interference with American business.
It was a test of diplomacy, as Britain and Germany competed for America's sympathy. President Wilson's confidential advisor said,
The British have gone as far as they possibly could in violating neutral rights, though they have done it in the most courteous way.
President Wilson had determined to keep America out of war,